Garrison of Unlocked. We have another Unlocked interview for you. It is Helen McKinstry. She is representing a type 1, and in particular, a preserving one. What does that mean? It's also known as perfect preserving. That means that Helen is going to be very focused on the nesting and nurturing of a task, of her team. And you'll hear in the interview how she provides that security, and it really affects her customer service. The thing also I would say is the ones are striving to feel perfect. Perfectionism is a burden, but they will always try to make things better, bring things into order so they can be consistent. You will definitely hear that in how she builds foundations. So Helen will also be talking sometimes when she's going to her connecting points. One goes to the type 4. The 4 is striving to feel unique. And so that's normally going to be a place of stress. And so maybe some moodiness or withdrawing. I did not hear much of that in this interview. Then the other one is point 7. They're striving to feel excited. So notice when she says, we celebrated each other. So that 7 space for a 1 is pretty healthy. It's pretty much an integrating factor for them to be their best self. So again, it's Helen McKinstry. She is a business owner of Saber Sign & Solutions in Austin, Texas, and been a business owner for 7 years. We're going to hear a little bit of her background in 2 scenes where she really bridges her past experience to her current business. So Helen, one of the great things about BNI, where I met you, is meeting all these business owners, and we're all at different stages. I'm 2 years in, you're 7 years in.
That's right.
Right? So we learn from each other, but not only 7 years, your leadership development really started before that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I was with IBM for many, many years. Mm-hmm. Started out as a programmer, but became a manager. Mm-hmm. And then over the years took on more and more responsibility. So grew from just managing one little team to managing multiple departments. And at different points in time took on responsibility for even managing cross-functional teams, representatives from different organizations. So a combination of managing across organizations as well as managing, small and large organizations. So that taught me a bit, and it was rather actually interestingly and pleasantly surprising to me how many of those skills became transferable from a large business to a small business.
Yeah, so tell us what were some main lessons you learned there? What were some situations that ended up being, oh, okay, I really learned something here?
Yeah, so when you're managing an organization with people, it doesn't matter if they're small or they're large. There are a number of things you can learn over the years. And one of those things is really the importance of the culture, because that influences how people feel about their jobs, how easily they communicate with one another, how motivated they are to problem solve together, versus going off in a corner by themselves, right? Where it becomes a lot harder to work together as a team. And so learning how to manage people and how to coach people, so that as an organization, you've just got this very positive culture. It makes a huge difference, right? In terms of how effective your organization is. So it's not just about liking where you work. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
But if you don't like where you work and you can't communicate well at work, it affects the product of your work.
Oh, yeah, sure. The creativity would be missing. I imagine if you're anxious and you're not able to lay out some of these resentments, you just aren't going to come up with really new possibilities. Yeah.
Right. You need to be able to listen to each other, play off of each other, use each other as sounding boards. And and learn to be open with one another. There are inevitably going to be people with ideas whose ideas are different than yours. And all of that, if people are open and receptive to that, can use that for the good of the project, of the organization, and it becomes just a very positive environment. And again, it all influences having great outcomes in the service or the product that you're ultimately delivering to your client.
Oh, right. Yeah. And when did you see that a change was needed as you were leading these different groups?
It's pretty obvious, right? So one group I led in my IBM career, it was a cross-functional team. Every individual worked in a different organization, and each organization had their own organizational goals. I'm in test, my job is to test. I'm in development, my job is to write code. I'm in sales, my job is to sell. I'm in documentation, my job is to write documentation, etc.
I mean, yeah.
So
already it sounds like different personalities, right? Because
different people and different goals, right? My goal is to test the code. My goal is just to write the code. My goal is just to write the documentation. So in bringing those people together, we started out as very much a group of individuals. Very much a group of individuals, and very difficult to really focus on a common goal.
Oh, right. They're all speaking different languages. So how did you eventually get them moving in a forward motion?
So it was a series of steps, right? So take a step, see what happened, adjust, take another step. So one of the first steps we did was have kind of an icebreaker session that allowed the team members to get to know one another a little bit better, because now they're starting to become a little bit sympathetic, empathetic to understanding where each other are coming from.
So they're listening,
right? So at least now they're a little bit more aware of each other as individual people, right? The second thing was I realized from that icebreaker that I had a number of, I'll say, introverts, as it turned out. Not by design.
Even the sales people?
Yeah, we may have had one or two extroverts in the entire group, but of a dozen or 14 people, most of them were introverts. And so they were kind of in their own little space and were very comfortable there, right? So we said, new rule. That became my mantra. New rule. And we had fun with it, right? We're not going to leave this meeting without doing a go around the table. And everybody needs to say at least one thing about what's going on.
Oh, and this is after the icebreaker.
After the icebreaker.
So already they're, encouraged to engage. So now this is the next thing to discuss.
Get them to talk with each other, right? So unfortunately, when we did that, everything that was coming out was bad news. It was just, everything was a Debbie Downer. And they're all issues. So I said, okay, new rule. We want to hear the issues, right? Because we're not communicating with one another if we're not exposing those issues. But we need to bring some positive and some reinforcement into the equation. So when we go around the table, you have to say at least one positive thing. Something that recognizes an accomplishment done or positive progress forward. Now, if you still have an issue, yes, please bring it up. We have to be able to talk, right? We have to be able to understand what the issue is so we can solve it. But you have to say at least one good thing. And I think at that point, we started seeing the tone in the room change. Suddenly, people were starting to celebrate each other's successes. And that started creating a little bit of the buy-in to let's recognize each other. Let's celebrate each other, right?
Yeah, so now it's a little less of how do I get these introverts to come out of their shell to where now it's like naturally happening.
Right.
Now that this new rule is in place. Please say something positive.
Right. So, and we would just reinforce these rules every time. We had fun with it, right? We didn't want it to make it a negative. We wanted to make it as a positive, right? So go around the table every meeting and you have to say at least one positive thing. So the next thing we did is, as people did bring in legitimate issues, they're bringing it in and everybody's hearing about it for the first time. And so people get on edge and start getting very defensive. So new rule, when you're going to bring an issue into the meeting, if at all possible, meet with the other people on the team who are most likely to be affected by that issue and see if you can talk with them before the meeting. So that when you come into the meeting, people aren't surprised. They don't feel like you pulled one over on them, right? Or that you just brought it in, for the very first time. And you may have actually come up with a couple of ideas of potential resolution before you come in, or you may still be in disagreement, but at least you all know where you're coming from,
right?
And then we can discuss it as a bigger team. And that started the beginning of people wanting to problem solve. So the first step was getting them to talk to each other.
Right.
The second step was getting them to celebrate each other. Yeah. And then the third step was getting them to problem solve together. And long story short, it took weeks and months, but we started developing a mutually accountable team.
Wow.
Where everybody in the team was, yes, representing their organization, but really wanting to see the success of the entire team. So it took a series of steps.
Yeah, when you're describing this, I just love the patience of laying this foundation down. You know, you're willing to see, you know, you saw that these are truly the steps to take before we see any progress.
But I think it was also constantly being open to see what the results of those steps were and readjusting.
Yes. You know, as you described before, they were individuals. It made me think of just within our body as a system. And, you know, the heart needs the eye, the ear, and all those things are not individual. They're all working together.
That's right.
And so it just seems like all those components were starting to work like a healthy body.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. And the more that the elements of the body learn about each other and how they can help each other versus the brain always dictating, you know, this is how it shall be. Those members of the body became much more effective at just helping each other.
Yeah.
Right?
And see that, and I would think that would affect just the way you're going to lay out the product. I mean, tech industry, you want things to be efficient, right? So who knew, you know, learning to get along would actually improve this, right?
Absolutely.
Because instead of putting out the fires of you're coming in with a problem with one of your employees, so now we have to deal with that. You know, the most efficient thing is, oh, why don't y'all talk outside this? And then you come in the room, and they just worked more and more together and worked as a whole system. That's really neat.
Yeah. Yep. And those lessons can apply across different types of organizations. But the one thing that's common in all of it, or the couple of things are, the environment and the culture of an organization truly makes a dramatic impact to the efficiency and the effectiveness of that organization. And so those things that I learned in my old IBM days very much carried forward. I didn't realize how much until I was in the seat as a new business owner. And I'm like, holy cow, there's more that applies here than I ever would have anticipated.
I just love how it was like stair steps, you know, and now you're ready for this responsibility of owning your own business. So when was there an application of some of these leadership skills from IBM?
Yeah, so it happens fairly much more frequently than I would have anticipated, right? I was thinking, how am I going to take a corporate career? And I mean, I don't have no skills to start this small business. Not true. A lot of them actually apply. So have had occasions where I'll think of one specifically, where I had two employees who one day just had a run-in with each other, okay, over a specific issue. They were at odds with each other.
They're like, this is familiar.
Very much at odds with each other. And because they were at odds with each other, they basically just stopped communicating to each other. And each one felt the other was absolutely disrespecting them, very much disrespecting them. And so each of them came into me individually and just thought, the boss will fix it. And so the challenge was, I knew from past experience that the boss just can't fix it by the boss's self, right? Because it doesn't work well. You have to engage those employees in being a part of the solution, or it won't be effective.
Yeah. Right? It won't be sustainable.
It won't be sustainable. It's like sending them to their corner and they're still going to be disgruntled, unhappy, and probably a lot of the information wouldn't really surface. So I spoke to each individual individually. And actually, from this one instance, we developed 3 core things in our business that we've used repeatedly since.
Oh, wonderful.
So the first one was, they very much felt like they were disrespecting each other. Yeah. Right? Each one felt the other was disrespecting them.
You're not listening to me.
And so you guys are at the point where you're so upset with one another, you're not even talking. But when you are talking, you feel like you're being disrespected. So rule number one, I guess my rules, right? So a value that I want us to always keep in mind is no matter how at odds you are with each other, do not disrespect each other. Don't insult. You can disagree. You have the right to disagree, right? We're all going to bring a different perspective, and you may have valid reasons for disagreeing, but never disrespect each other. Always respect each other. Point number one. Point number two, I need you to communicate together. If you're not talking and asking about, well, what made you think that? Why did you do that? You're not knowing what drove it, and you're going to continue at odds because your communication is broken. So the second thing I'm going to ask you to do is to go talk to the other person. And I said the same thing to both. You need to go talk to this person. You need to go talk to this person. That was not something they really wanted to hear from me.
Yeah. But you knew, hey, I don't need to reinvent the wheel here. I already saw the progress on a major stage of a corporation. Right? When you had the two go and talk to each other and, okay, let's that meeting, and you have team meetings. You want your team meetings to be efficient, right? Problem solving. So that's great. Okay, so let me see if I capture this. So there was the first step in your culture is when there's a conflict, first respect each other. Right? Absolutely. It's realistic to disagree. We know, as you said earlier, all of us have a different focus. It's different things are important to each one of us. So yeah, it's going to happen. It's just reality. So yeah, you can disagree, but not put each other under the bus. And I imagine too, what I see sometimes is gossip. Some people, hey, can you believe what they did? And then it just escalates instead of going directly to the person. So I really love this kind of emotional maturity that you're trying to teach, because yes, it's going to instill that healthy culture. So the second one was communication. And what I hear is this curiosity of, why did this happen? Right? You're not encouraging them to make overall statements. It's am I right? Just a curiosity of where are you coming from.
So what happened in this one example was, it turned out that the woman let the man know that she had just been given an assignment by me to run a certain set of reports, and that I needed by a certain time that day. And so she was thinking, I need to focus on this. I can't stop what I'm doing to go do this other thing. This is what I need to do. Well, she hadn't explained that. Meanwhile, she didn't realize that the way where she had put those other materials was actually causing the gentleman some issues. And he hadn't explained, well, if you put them here, it causes us these issues. I need them over here for this reason. So they had not communicated any of that information to each other. And she's like, oh, I didn't know that. And he's like, oh, I didn't know that you were under the gun, and I thought you were just ignoring me and disrespecting me. And she's like, no, I was trying to get these reports done. And so the communication there was key.
Wasn't it? Yeah. But I love how at first we're going to come together and respect.
Right.
Yeah, because that's going to make that second step a lot easier.
Right.
The communicating.
So then there's number 3, which is give each other grace. Because you don't know what's going on in that other person's world, whether that be an issue at work or an issue at home. You don't know if that person was up all night with a teething baby, just got the news that one of their parents is ill. You don't know necessarily what's going on in that person's life. You may, but you may not. And so at some point, whether or not you think that person should have behaved the way they did, you absolutely need to respect them. You absolutely need to communicate, but also give them some grace. They may be having a really rough day. And sometimes we just need to give each other some grace.
Oh, that's so nice.
So, yeah. And so we have since turned that into, those 3 phrases are now part of our principles of how we treat one another. And they are written on our walls at work.
Which it would be easily for a sign company to do.
Absolutely.
I imagine.
We know how to do wall graphics.
You did some teamwork, I'm
Yes.
sure, to make that happen.
Yes. Yes. So they're up on our wall. And so in a couple of different places where people can see them every day.
Oh, that's excellent.
And so if we ever find ourselves kind of lapsing a little bit and issues creating, we could just kind of remind ourselves, remember, this is what we do, right? So that we can continue to support one another. And if we're finding ourselves at odds with each other, just take a breath and look at that and just think about, what can I do to help get past this by respecting one another always. Don't disrespect each other. You can be mad, but try not to disrespect each other. You have a different opinion, try and always respect one another. And communicate. Ask questions. Talk about why you feel the way you do. And third, just give each other grace.
That's so nice. Yeah, just accept that life isn't always easy.
That's right.
For any of us on any given day. So I'm curious, you've talked about the teammates, and that's got to give you relief as you go day to day, feeling like, okay, I can concentrate on what's important for my job and don't have to worry and manage,
Well, it's even more than that. Certainly,
I don't have to supervise so closely.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've actually empowered your employees to be a little bit more in the driver's seat to helping that be a positive environment.
Yeah.
And when you have a more positive environment, when people enjoy working together, when they're seeing that productivity, they feel better about what they're doing, and you become more productive as an organization, and you're happier coming to work every day.
Yeah, and who doesn't like to be around happy people?
Right.
And probably the spouses and children are thanking you as well. They're not coming home all stressed out and taking it out on them. I wondered, I know that type 1s can get a little critical of themselves and critical of others, but I just feel like you've somehow been able to overcome that. And can you tell me how you did that?
Oh, I am a perfectionist. So, sometimes I have to give myself grace, right? And so
you've learned you can help others do it because you've learned that lesson yourself.
Yeah, it's communication. So if I feel like I'm letting down a client, one of the things I can do is communicate. That goes a long way, right? Or if I'm annoyed at a client, sometimes it's like, give the client a little grace, find out what's going on in their world. So those same lessons can kind of help us put things a little bit more in perspective. So yeah, I can be hard on myself. But any of those times that anxiety comes up, or you're thinking, you're trying, I do think I'd like to hold myself to a certain standard.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right? You wouldn't have gotten moved up in those leadership positions if that weren't the case.
Yeah. Right.
They saw that you take your task seriously and want to make it the best that it can be. Right. That's the great thing about perfectionists. I'm going to perfect this model and create foundations to sustain.
So again, you have to always, apply some, I don't know, grace to it all, right? So I am a perfectionist. So I look at things and I want things to be a certain way, whether I'm doing them myself or whether my team is delivering it, because it's my company and my company needs to deliver good work.
That's such an easy space to go in. Yeah.
So it's been important to me when I'm communicating with my employees to not come across as being critical over explaining to them why we're trying to achieve, congratulating them on what they've done well, and explaining to them why a particular detail is important. So you can't become so much of a perfectionist that you're driving everybody else nuts and they're feeling like that they're just receiving criticism all the time.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right? So you have to find a way to turn that into positive motivation. All right. So we're trying to achieve this. What do we need to do to be able to achieve that? Is there a better way to achieve that?
I love that. Something I'd love to highlight is that, yes, as a business owner, we can definitely get hard on ourselves, but type 1s even more so. And so what I love about that story is that what you learn to do for yourself, now you're able to equip others to do. And that's just got to be really satisfying for you.
Yeah. Well, and again, at the end of the day, everybody's a lot happier. When everybody's happier, we're generally more productive. We're generally having better results.
Yes.
So,
well, Helen, thank you for this time. It's wonderful, obviously, to have met you in this network. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed my conversation with Helen. She shows a lot of emotional maturity, kind of a buzzword, right? Emotional IQ. And as you can tell, not easy. One of the things ones do to grow is acceptance. And so notice when she said, hey, some of us have bad days. It might be why they said something that made somebody feel bad, so give each other grace, which is another way of saying, hey, I accept that life can be hard sometimes, and I'm not going to hold that personally against you. Also, we saw that her leadership had the rules that created a way to have a perfect culture, right? To have a really great system in place to take care of any further conflict, because it's important to get at the task at hand, right? So I think she was just such a great example that we saw of someone that's incorporating acceptance for herself, for each other, and also using the rules to have a secure and healthy culture. So join me again. We have type 2 left, type 5, 6, and 7. So join me then.